The Military Times reported yesterday, I guess it was, that, here's the quote. The military draft may be headed for the scrap heap. The House Armed Services Committee will include instructions to examine the Selective Services Program's viability and possible alternatives as part of its review of the annual Defense Authorization Bill next week, staffers confirmed on Friday. I have to say, I think that all of us should have a very strong opinion on this, and this should not just be another thing that gets slipped by. And there's a whole bunch of reasons for this. I think one of the most important reasons is that a volunteer army does not represent a nation. It is not demographically, geographically, psychographically representative of the nation as a whole. The kind of folks who volunteer for military duty during times of war and during times of not war tends to be two different but somewhat broad categories of people. And the people who don't volunteer for military service, which is over 90% of Americans, right now I think it's over 95% of Americans, fit a slightly different psychographic profile. And I believe it's a good thing for there to be people in the military who are not gung-ho military, who are doing their job, who are there, like during World War II, during Vietnam, draftees. I think that that's a good thing. So where is the voice coming from that says we should do away with selective service? It's certainly not Charlie Rangel. He comes on this program at least once a year, and he and I agree about how we need to bring back the draft. And we would like to add to it. Actually, now I guess if Senator Sanders, or for that matter, Secretary Clinton's proposals for low-cost college pass, then our original compromise is probably unnecessary, which was take a year off after high school before you go to college and serve your country for a year, whether it's in the military or whether it's as a volunteer in a hospital or a school or whatever it may be. And you'd be paid for that. And you would get benefits for that. And then at the end of that year, you get a free college. Now we can do the free college without the military draft. But I think that the important thing about a military draft is if you look at the countries in the past that have been overthrown by military coup, or where the military becomes so powerful that the country becomes basically the dog that the tail of the military wags, you'll find there are almost always volunteer armies. Whereas armies full of draftees tend not to foist horrors upon their own people. They tend not to engage in military coups. They tend not to, pump up legislative stupidities. So at the very time that Republicans in Congress, now you ask yourself, okay, why would Republicans in Congress want to do away with the draft? I mean, some Democrats may want to do away with the draft because they think that it's, it's too militaristic. I get that argument. I don't agree with it, but I get the argument. But why would the institutional Republican Party be opposed to the draft? I think the answer is fairly straightforward. And this is, I guarantee you, not going to be part of the argument that you're going to hear on national television. And the reason why is because all these for-profit corporate privateers who are living off the government never talk about it on television. But the reality is that there's a whole industry making money off supplying soldier-type services to the military. And they make a lot of money. These companies like Blackwater used to be, I mean, they've got a new name now and a whole new whatever, but yeah, there's no shortage of these. Yes, instead of having kitchen patrol, instead of having KP soldiers, instead of having them peel the potatoes and make lunch for you, and you have a half a dozen soldiers in there who, if the base gets overrun, can pick up their rifle and go fight, which was the whole idea. Instead of that, and instead of paying those soldiers $30,000, $40,000 a year, plus expenses and whatnot, we're going to, or less or more, whatever it is, we are going to instead charge our federal government $250,000 a year. We will hire people for $100,000 a year, and we'll take the $150,000 profit and put it in our pockets and distribute some of it back to Republican lawmakers as a campaign contribution / bribe. And so as you see now, about half of the NSA's entire budget is outsourced that we know of. I mean, a lot of it you don't even know of. It's been years since I've seen a percentage of the actual military budget that is outsourced. To the best of my knowledge, no federal agency is actually keeping track of this, but it's huge. It's on the order of hundreds of billions of dollars. And, this is money that is going to private for-profit corporations to do things that the military should be doing. This, I think, is why this thing is being pushed so hard. And frankly, I think we need to undo it. Okay, the other story I wanted to open with today, I've got a whole bunch more that I want to share with you. But again, this has to do with our culture, frankly. Another part of military of a draft, as it were, is that it gets people out of their comfort zones and out of their normal areas and out into the world. Even if it's just, the world of the hospital, on the other side of town that you're volunteering at. There are other reasons for a draft. Number one, we need to learn from the lessons of Vietnam, frankly, that having loopholes for the draft is not a good idea. Number one, people didn't want to get drafted because they didn't want to die. Well, if the draft incorporated service in our country, if we created our own civilian conservation corps or something like that, if there was some service function that you could perform or volunteer in a school or a Head Start program or whatever, if there was volunteer, then it wouldn't be, oh my God, I'm going to lose my life. It's just, hey, I take a year between high school and college. Now, when I lived in Germany, this was the law of the land in Germany. And we would, frequently meet young people who were on that year. In fact, we lived at a facility that had a hospital attached to it or a care center attached to it. And there were a number of these people. It was basically like interns. You do a year, helping the place run, and then you get a free college education. So although I'm with Bernie on everybody should get a free college education anyway if they want to go to a state school, but anyway, there's number one. And number two, I would say that the draft is what ended the Vietnam War. We didn't win Vietnam. We didn't accomplish our objectives. We just, Jerry Ford just said, okay, that's it. We're pulling out of here. Nixon actually won the election in 1972 on a platform of a secret plan to end the war. Those of you old enough to remember will remember. That was his main selling point. Elect me and I will end the war. Hubert Humphrey has not been, that was 1968. What was 1972? McGovern? McGovern won't know how to do it. I'll do it. I know how to do it. That was his sales pitch. And so people voted for what they thought was the pacifist.
To watch more clips from our programs, hit the Watch More Videos button over here. And please be sure to hit the handy-dandy subscribe button so you'll always be up to date. Tag, you're it.